The hardest challenge Farthest Frontier offers is the Vanquisher difficulty, played on a small, arid highlands map. Predators and raids alike are rampant, unfettered diseases strike both your people and your farm, and you start with the bare minimum while the land around you tries to give you as little as it can. You're supposed to survive that by slowing down time to deftly tune supply lines, maximize your villagers' efficiencies, and carefully manage your resources. Instead, I'm topping that challenge off. I'm locking the speed to 2 times, and I'm never pausing to make this a frantic foray at fending off a fatal fade to black. Let's speed through this early game. A pair of hunting cabins is going to allow Selenia and Nania to hunt down nearby deer for sustenance, which is going to have to do for a while since the map isn't giving us anything to forage or any water to fish from. This is what Vanquisher gets you. It's been literally 20 seconds since I started and the first predator's already shown up. This wolf goes down easily enough, but there are always more lurking in the shadows, looking for lone villagers to kill anytime they wander off a little too far. At least our hunters can put their carcasses to good use. Whales don't need a nearby lake to give us some water. Oh look, another predator less than a minute later. I'm not going to bring up every wolf or bear that attacks because this video would be an hour long, but Mother Nature constantly tries us this entire time. As if limited resources weren't hard enough, this map's hilly terrain makes even placing a place to chop firewood kind of hard. That flat land we have to the west is getting saved for a neighborhood. All of this is still going way too smoothly. I want this being way more hectic, so I'm going to kick the speed up to its maximum setting and lock it there. Then let's start a farm. This land's horrible for it. Bad fertility, sandy as can be, rocky, and with lots of weeds. But you can't feed more than a small settlement on deer and wolves alone. And speaking of, you know how I said I'd stop showing you wolves? This one gave someone rabies. 5 minutes in and our first villager is already dead just like that. Well, not just like that. It's going to take Selenia a few days to actually die. The rest of the villagers work hard to assure her that her family is going to be safe. Empty houses and lots of food attract new villagers to handle her work and to keep the village both going and growing. Roads join the neighborhood to industry, and a saw pit goes in to cut planks for more complicated buildings in the future. There's Selenia dead half a year in. The rest of the village is fairly content with their lots despite that, but hopefully a graveyard brings them some sort of peace as winter nears. And honestly, ends without much fanfare. We had enough food stock to survive, and they can't work through the cold without thick hide jackets we unlock by finishing a stockyard. Once we do, a tannery will help us turn those pelts into coats to work deeper into the winter, a fletcher will outfit our hunters with bows and arrows, and a cobbler will make shoes to keep everyone healthy and effective. With survival needs addressed, it's time to handle their growing appetites. The first farm is finished, but it's horrible. That can be improved, but it's going to take a few years of working the fields instead of growing food, which starts next year because we really need food now. More farms are already underway to supply food a market will eventually distribute to houses. We're really riding the line between starving and surviving, but I still want to put more and more houses in to grow the population as quickly as we can manage. Despite shoddy fields, farmers harvest hundreds of beans. Neat. Without anything else to do in their own fields this late into the year, all 6 farmers are working the next one into shape instead of just lazing about. It really does take a village. The following spring, 6 farmers instead head to their own plots to plant more beans. Yeah, I was still too worried they'd all starve to actually work the land like I'd wanted to. That should hopefully change soon once we've got our footing and are a little bit more established. And speaking of communal work, a fire goes up at the storehouse. They grab water from a nearby well and put the fire out this time. In better news, I made the right call in growing beans. Constantly teetering between starving and being completely fine is just what happens when you recklessly grow without the time to plan out how much food you actually need. But this is also what happens. The town center gets its first upgrade only 2.5 years in. That's gonna unlock a ton of buildings. The first is gonna be, well, it's not the healer's hut Yuli is hoping for. That would give her a chance fighting against rabies, but we need clay to build that, and there's none on this map. No, the first building we get is a trading post to actually import the clay we'll be using for that and for other buildings as well. I'll sell excess shoes and stone for cash, but unfortunately, the traders you get each year are random, and these 2 aren't selling what we need. Maybe next year. In better news, the fields are making really good progress. The first 3 have now been worked to be half decent, and the 4th is just a few years off from that. Ooh, although one of those fields is diseased. This higher difficulty also ups the frequency of this, which is going to kill a lot of beans until we grow something else that isn't vulnerable to mildew for a while, and it can also move to other nearby fields that are growing beans. And it's not the only disease that's ravaging us right now. Predators have killed almost 10% of my entire population with rabies, and there aren't any immediate plans to remedy that either. We need so much labor going into food that I can't afford walls to actually make us safe. Sure, we're able to sustain ourselves now, but one bad harvest or one bad raid would mean starvation, and I want farms to grow more than just food in the near future anyways. Next year, we're gonna start growing flax to give our villagers something to wear besides just their coats. Another closer winter leads to another hope-filled spring. Almost 1/3 of our population is going to be farmers, but I think that's the only way we'll realistically be able to keep growing like this. We need to not only get enough food for now, we need to prepare the land for later. A more useful set of traders arrived, letting me exchange the plentiful stone around us for our first shipment of clay. Unfortunately, raiders know I'm distracted and can't pause, so they launch their first attack. Fortunately, there's only a few of them, and they die off just as quickly as they came. That one wasn't much, but future raids are going to be a lot scarier. But we've got clay, so let's put in some of the useful buildings that unlocks for us instead of worrying about our defenses. First up is a school and a healer's hut. They'll help the villagers survive diseases and make future generations smarter, which will make them better workers in turn. Clay also lends itself to a candle shop to give the villagers their first luxury, which makes them happy and encourages more immigration. The last building that I'm going to put in with clay right now is an arborist. This game actually models a villager's diet, so the lack of fruit right now makes them vulnerable to scurvy or other similar ailments. They'll be a lot healthier once they've got something to eat from the fruit trees that this is going to grow, eventually. Trees unsurprisingly take a long time to get there. We're using almost every last villager for the economy, either in food or in resource production. That's slowing down gathering and flattening a lot, but that's super worth it. Traders continue to arrive to take the clothes we make from leather pelts and give us clay and herbs. I haven't shown it in a while, but wolves have continued attacking every minute or so this entire time. Fortunately, we are going to put a stop to that at some point. An explorer found the wolves' den to the south. These spawn the beasts, so I'm going to try to destroy these eventually, although I do want a wall to retreat to first. The explorer Jewel gets hunted and killed for finding them, but her sacrifice is gonna be remembered. Assuming we can actually get her body back to bury it. This is what, 7-ish minutes into the video and we're in year 7. 50 people, good food stores, and decent supply chains going. Not bad, but things are only gonna get a lot more complicated from here as we get bigger and there's more to manage. The next major goal is a tier 3 town center, which requires 150 people in town and 25 homes with a desirability over 30 that we're just not quite ready to meet. The healer's house and school are both in, though neither they nor the first soap shop does the job. Another week attack by raiders does nothing but mean that we need to start putting in walls. A different pack of wolves attack moments later, hurting Carlos? I'm going with Carlos. He's close enough to death that only a healer can save him, but we've actually got one now. Progress sure does feel good when you claw it from Mother Nature's uncaring grasp, especially for Carlos. Though, the healer's hut can't save everyone, apparently. The game's trying to tell me to build a school like I don't already have one. Let's vote on why that popped up. If you think it's because I'm ahead of the curve, subscribe. If you think it's something else, call me an idiot in the comments. We still need to work on desirability to upgrade homes, which means that the first decorations go in. These buildings, like shrines, give a good buff in an area around them. Shrines don't cost much and affect a large area, so they're going to be our first choice. Yeah, that's 2 wolf attacks from the west in less than a minute. I think there's definitely more dens out there. I guess that's 2 hunting trips in the future. The school's first class graduates. They know how important it is that we finally have fruit they can eat while walking in a huge park. Well, relatively huge anyways. It's like 2 shacks worth. Doesn't actually seem that large, but it does give a large desirability buff and a huge area around it. Placing it here hits every home we already have and should cover the area I want to use for the next neighborhood. Although I can't actually put them to use yet, I want to start mining things so that we can start metalworking as soon as possible. I'm gonna go for coal, sand, and iron. Gold sounds nice, but feels like more of a luxury. Besides, we're limited more by traders not having what we want to buy than by money at this point. What we do mine is only possible because of our farmers' hard work though. We were barely surviving when half of our villagers were gathering food before, but the fields are now good enough that we need less than a third of them on it to actually keep the root cellars full. All the population they support fit nicely in a growing neighborhood. It's already desirable enough for the houses to get upgraded. Now we only need to fit a few more and then fill them up to upgrade the town center. But things can't go well for long. A building lights up despite the rain. That wouldn't be too much of an issue on its own, but raiders treat it like a signal fire and show up at our doorstep. The lone lookout tower gives villagers nearby plenty of time to garrison, but eventually goes down beneath a barrage of blows. A wolf the raiders walk through on the way in actually joins the fight and attacks some of them too. The garrison town center is out of range of the ones destroying the neighborhood, so it's time for some militia justice. And for me, frantically trying to click the enemies. A couple buildings eventually go down, but we do chase them all off with only a single loss. If only these guys dropped weapons. Or herbs. I'd honestly take those over weapons. I definitely need more lookout towers and defenses if raids are gonna keep growing like this. Another fire hits the soap shop, but that's okay. There's a well literally right there. Okay, sure. Why not? More predators, more diseases, more issues. I just want to take my time managing farms and putting in a few more, but they're all making this way too difficult. Let's at least take care of that wolf problem a little bit more permanently. They keep attacking because wolf dens to the south and to the west spawn them in. I can't give every one of my villagers bows, but we don't need weapons when we outnumber the wolves 30-1. Someone does die, and another villager gets rabies, but we take out both wolf dens to the west. The south has another 3 dens. Another couple villagers villagers die for the cause. But we were losing 1 a year to predators anyways, and this should alleviate that by a lot, so I'm happy to have them make this sacrifice. Though, future me talking, bears make up the difference and keep attacking us anyways. With all those cleared out, I'm thinking that expanding to the south for more of that fertile-ish ground is actually a really good idea. A barn can also go in for when traders finally feel like giving us some cattle. This is a good way to scale meat and pelt production up as we grow too big for the wandering deer populations to sustain. I also want to start flattening the hills around the village so that I can actually put new buildings down. Fortunately, we've got tons of workers to handle it. Unfortunately, it's kind of finicky and takes a lot of tries to get the land flat enough to actually be used. I wonder when merchants are going to pick up on the fact that we're loaded and need a ton of herbs. Unfortunately, larger wealth starts to attract bigger and bigger raids. They hit from the north, where our defenses are the weakest. Wait, and the west? Why is this message popping up? That normally means the raid's over, but they're still here in the north, and soon in the middle of the village after breaching there. This northern section doesn't have any lookout towers, so villagers rove out and fight them off directly until the raiders eventually retreat. They didn't do too much damage, but that is a little bit worrying. Food's starting to get low, thanks in part to deer nibbling at our farms and the growing population. After we upgrade the town center, I'm gonna let the population plateau for a little while. And with that magic of editing, the last immigrant arrives and we can upgrade— oh wait, we need more gold. Man, I just spent a bunch on herbs. I do have stuff to sell, but the traders have already left for this year. Well, I did need to stockpile more planks anyways. Thank God that 5 flattenings isn't nearly enough to let me put the market in here. That would use some of the precious planks we have. A merchant we can sell something to finally arrives, and we have just barely enough shoes to shove at them for the 1200 gold we need. Although some other upgrades I've been taking care of mean that we are out of planks. I'll at least build with raw lumber while I wait. That means that the south finally gets an expansion to secure more farmland we've already been working on turning into good workable fields. The north, meanwhile, just needs reinforcements. A death and then another attack 30 seconds later is all the proof I need. I sat here waiting for the last plank for a full 20 seconds. Ah well, that finished product is beautiful. Although, lesson learned, don't try to do a rotating shot when you can't rotate with a keyboard. Look, this still looks great. Alright game, alright. Let me at least build some metalworking before you tell me what I should actually be doing. The upgrade also unlocks a bunch of new, advanced resource buildings, some expensive decorations, a couple ways to preserve food that'll only help once I've got enough stock that it's an issue, a place to make barrels to store food, and a couple milestones for entertainment. But we're way too plank poor to even start addressing the new problems, so let's give that a little while. With wood still being a little hard to get, but stone being everywhere, I'm also gonna start making stone roads and stone walls. I guess that means it's time to tear down the children's favorite climbing rock. That's not a playground, it's 400 walls. The resource buildings we want all need heavy tools. A fortuitously timed merchant arrives with some just as planks start to stack up. The first is going to be a foundry to smelt iron and gold ingots right here. Hold on. Oh, actually it can fit here. It's not where I want it to be eventually, but I'll just move it. That's gonna make iron— wait. 5 iron ore makes 5 iron ingots, but 5 gold ore makes 100 ingots? Am I gonna be rich? I still want to prioritize iron for now, but I do think that we're gonna be able to buy lots of herbs and clay going forward. They even pumped out 300 gold ingots worth before I could change the settings. The great limiter going forward for buildings is gonna be clay bricks. I need to keep importing lots of clay for those, buildings, pottery, and more. They say you can tell what's most important to people by what's at the heart of their city. Unrelated, but a brewery fits really nicely here near the town center, don't you think? A blacksmith's forge goes in. They're gonna make tools and weapons from iron ingots there. Ooh, I'd hope the brewery would be able to make mead from honey, but beer still needs wheat. Let's start growing some wheat, and while we're at it, let's throw in a windmill. Grain's supposed to give more food per plot, but does require a lot of extra work, and seems to rot faster in my limited experience. Hopefully a large enough population can eat all that bread before it rots. Increasing the production density would be a nice way to address the impending shortage of good farmland. The bricks we've got mean that we can upgrade some of our buildings, like the root cellar. I'm not going to yet, since we've made the big brain play of just not having enough food to run into storage issues, but I do want to do that eventually. Right now, I want to save up for a market upgrade. We're having a lot of issues stocking the homes, and an upgraded market gets a second worker, which means it does twice the work. Upgrading a hunter's lodge takes no bricks, so I'll go ahead and do that, although it only seems to let the workers set small game traps that focus on pelts. But I'm still doing fine for those, so this isn't going to be a priority until after the armory goes in and we start chewing through our pelts. The grain for booze finally arrives, and bread starts to fill everyone's stomachs and their hearts. The new buildings mean that we finally stock an excess of tools, barrels, and beer. We're really advancing here. Our farms take a lot of land, but the fields are steadily becoming more and more fertile thanks to peas and clovers. Still, the lack of stored food has me hesitant to grow our population. You notice we've been right around this 180 people for a really long time now. I need better infrastructure, like cattle and higher field fertility, to sustain the much larger population I want. Really, I'm still waiting for a trader to bring me cows. The start of our bread production has me feeling a little bit more hopeful though, so I am going to start building another neighborhood. neighborhood. The original is still going to be a lot nicer thanks to a pub in the center and more decorations, but this new one's still going to host enough villagers to maybe get us working towards our next major goal. The pub helps every villager be happy, but unhappier ones that have a little bit too much to drink can start brawls, so this makes maintaining a happy population even more important. Oh, cows are finally here, let's go! Although I can only afford 2 at the moment thanks to some recent imports. It'll take a while to get the larger population I want to give us tons of food, but this is still enough that I'm happy to start working in more homes. So it turns out I've been making a pretty big mistake that's partially responsible for all the food issues. Farming in this game isn't as simple as just grain equals wheat. There are different types of each food, and grain itself has 3 options. Wheat needs more clay in the soil and better fertility to get a good yield, but grows the most when it does. Rye would work in this soil, but still needs better fertility than we've got. Buckwheat, however, doesn't require that. That means that it makes just as much food while it depletes the soil less and grows more quickly compared to the other 2 options. Once harvested, all 3 are the same, so I'm going to switch everything we have over to buckwheat. It's been a while since I mentioned putting these in, since it takes builders a while to get that far south, but the stone wall is finally done. That means I can finally tear down this wall. Wait, not like that. Hold on. I don't want that trader leaving. Wait. You know, locking the game to 3 times base speed is getting kinda stressful. The western front takes a huge hit from raiders. I'm gonna need stone walls and gates really soon. Although our litany of archer towers deal with the issue without too much difficulty for now. We even win the coin flip to see if our villagers will put out a fire. The wall upgrades are finally about done, meaning that it's time to upgrade the roads next. Oh, did I mention that we're loaded? 5,000 gold in the trading post and another 2,000 in our bank. All without selling anything now. We're just raking in the cash from smelted ingots. I'm gonna go ahead and use some of that to put in expensive decorations to boost desirability. These have different shapes, so you can nestle away smaller decorations into nooks and crannies, while larger spaces get huge statues. If you've got a keen eye, you might have seen this place getting flattened over and over and over in recent clips. It's taken 18 attempts for this theater to go in. This is going to entertain villagers and boost desirability by a ton. What do you mean they don't care about entertainment? Do they not know how much that costs? Bloody peasants don't appreciate the finer things in life. There's still a lot to do here, but the village is shaping up nicely. Better buildings made from brick, stone roads, and better decorations all do a lot to lend our village an advancing look. We're no longer just wooden shacks and buildings. I think it's time to start expanding on the way to the final town center upgrade at 300 people. I do still want to give my ungrateful villagers nice things, so glass blowing and furniture making gets underway. After that, they're gonna have every luxury available but spices, which I think you have to import and are presumably really expensive and rare. A barracks to train better soldiers goes in on the west, then some walls surround it to make it a courtyard to enter through. I'm starting to have enough weapons to stock a strong fighting force, meaning that soldiers here should start tearing through enemies. It's so nice to see that the efforts to improve the village are going well, and just look at the snow thaw around buildings and paths alike. I do wish I'd used more curved roads, but all the hills and time constraints make it hard to make things look pretty. Ooh, a new calf. The 2 cattle gave birth to our first new offspring, although I am going to continue buying more to fill out the herd when I get the chance. Oh god, save the theater. Don't let it burn. Oh, thank god. Speak of the devil, my new favorite trader arrives. They've got cows and soap itself, and we've got more than enough money to buy lots of boats. And to attract the next big raid. 41 savages mob the gate, breach it in moments, and stream into the village as the town center and lookout towers return fire. A couple buildings fall, but the rest of the raiders are eventually forced to flee. I don't like letting them breach these walls though. We definitely need better defenses soon. Add another to the list of big mistakes I've been making with crops. Specifically, all these peas. They have an appalling heat resistance, but I've been growing them in the middle of summer. Let's swap peas to early spring and move beans, which are heat resistant, to that peak instead. By the time I fix that issue for every field, half a year passes in game. Still, hopefully that's going to alleviate our slowly growing issues with food. We're also starting to not make enough shoes and clothes for our larger population, so I'll start fixing those as well. Between that and making armor in the near future, we're going to need a lot more pelts than we can get ourselves. The cattle we're raising will help with that, but the herd needs to grow for a while first, and that still probably won't be enough. Thankfully, we're loaded enough to start importing those alongside clay and herbs. The herd of laborers start clearing rocks, and good lord, we have a lot of them ignoring our lumber shortage, while a root cellar starts going in to store all the food harvested in the southern fields that's so far from our current storage. A granary and root cellar go up in the north to up our storage there. With that, I can start putting in new fields. This land is unfortunately even worse than the other land we've been using, so they are going to have to go in well before we need them to actually start making food. In better news, we're getting an armory going for the same reason. Fights are okay now, but I do suspect that they're going to get a lot harder going forward. Some of the text talks about battering rams and heavily armored enemies that I don't think we've met yet. Speak of the very meager Meager Devil, another raid hits the north where our tower coverage is lacking. Did they choose that spot specifically because we only have one tower in the area that'll hit them? That'd be pretty neat AI if so. Regardless, the enemies beat down a wall and stream in yet again, where more of our shots start to land. There's a lot of them though, and we do eventually fight them off, but the first villager in a while dies to them. It would have gone better if I'd used my barracks, but I kinda forgot about it. Let's move on and add another arborist and a horde of fruit trees to celebrate the victory instead. Oh, being loaded is so nice. Clay we haven't had in a while, pelts we now need, and some willows make their way to our coffers. That last one is a basic resource we haven't had access to until now. Putting baskets in our colonists' hands should help with hauling. Being loaded also means that we can put in a large statue in the northeast. While fixing the crop rotation hasn't quite fixed our food issues, it's not as bad as it seems. Grain and milled flour, which we have a lot of, don't count towards those months remaining until we actually turn them into bread. If it does get close, I can always slaughter a few of our cows to get an emergency supply to survive through the winter. An upgraded trading post might indirectly help with these food problems by increasing the number of traders that arrive with foodstuffs or other useful goods. It's also going to be needed for the last town center upgrade once we get a few more people. And guess which one I care about more? I'm still going to work to improve the food situation by swapping our first fields to full-time production now that their fertility is finally doing better. Beans and peas will continue to improve fertility, although they're vulnerable to the same diseases, which could be an issue. Another raid hits the front. Oh man, I put in low walls, they just walk over there, huh? At least the barracks is putting in work. 6 archers shooting at once, while the lookout towers behind put down more fire. I don't even need to have the soldiers leave the safety of their garrison to fight in melee combat. The last raid breached the village and killed someone, but this one fails to even get inside. I'm still gonna change that and put some actual walls in. The food situation is also improving, but we can still make it a lot better. Rye is sensitive to fertility and gave less than buckwheat because of that at first, but our ever improving fields can actually grow it now. That's gonna almost double the grain production we have in some of our older fields. The new fields can't quite swap, but they will eventually. Aw, you know, it's not often that a death makes me happy, but our first villager has died of old age. That's a life well lived in a prosperous town affording hundreds with almost every luxury imaginable. What more could you ask for? Let's go with labor camps. These employ people to harvest nearby trees, while a wagon shop ships it all back along a nice road. Another one of these camps goes into the northwest, and then a third goes in the southwest. I might add more if I still need more lumber after all of this. The granary is actually full. I guess that's a good problem to have. Another raid's a significantly worse one, especially when they breach that northern wall again. I need to up my defenses going forward because raids are taking too long to kill, and a single wall can't hold all of them back for long. That's gonna include a second archer in every tower and a couple of upgrades to those towers. We're not gonna need bricks to upgrade these, but we do just in general. Each yard only makes about 50 per year, which is enough for like 1 or 1.5 upgrades, and there's a lot that I want to make. I'll even buy, oh, actually not much, I can't afford it. I need to stock more gold in the trading center. But what we do buy is enough to supplement our natural production and upgrade the town center to the 4th and final level. And then I catch it brilliantly, like the pro YouTuber I am. That's gonna unlock every building upgrade for us. There are still a couple more goals we have, but first, let's upgrade those defenses. That's gonna include crossbows at an upgraded fletchery, as well as a barracks at each of the gates in. Like the western front, all those are gonna get a second set of walls around them to sort of create a fortified courtyard. The next raid comes quickly enough to demonstrate why we need them. Those walls aren't all in yet, but those that are keep our barracks working nicely and thin enemies out before they actually hit the main walls. A couple of villagers outside the walls died, and the raiders do eventually breach our walls, but far fewer get in than before, and more crossbows should handle that gap nicely. Nothing's gonna handle fires nicely though. The worst one yet destroys manors and the school alike, while our villagers fail to put a single one out. They might be having AI issues with this many people and this much stuff going on the map. Still, the village is great now. Just look at everyone going about their days. It's smooth enough that I can take time to just watch while I wait for bricks to upgrade our metalworking and the theater. The former is going to help with defenses, while the latter will get at least one house to 100% desirability, which is my last goal. I think that's as close to beating the game as I'm going to get here. At least while my computer starts lagging like this. You may have noticed, I'm not sure how YouTube will handle it. I want to expand the neighborhood a bit, so a wall gets knocked down to... You know, I hope no raids attack until that's in. I really should have built a new wall first, huh? Well, having free time means I can also start decorating with some trees and a garden around these unused corners near the center of town. That's not going to affect desirability, but it should just look nice to you, and I know it does to me. Eventually, though, it's time to upgrade the theater. Even before that's in, the village is just so pretty now. The bustling look of everyone leaving their homes to work is just divine, and the fully finished theater just adds to that. Of course, it's 99% desirability. Well, a small garden can fix that and give us 2 amazing houses everyone else is at least a little jealous of. And with that, I think the town of Malmouth is complete. I've had so much fun doing this, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it. I'm not really sure how much variety there is in Farthest Frontier yet, but I'm gonna do at least a couple more videos on this game. Got any fun ideas for a challenge? Leave them in the comments below.